Hello everyone, and we are going to be looking at the potential severe thunderstorms that will be happening in the Oklahoma and Texas, Arkansas area for tomorrow. However, before we could get into the forecast, be sure to subscribe to the channel so you won't miss a single update or live stream. Right now we are currently looking at the energy within the atmosphere, and this is going to be around today at this was actually earlier today. Let's go ahead and fast forward this, and let's go ahead and go over to tomorrow at around 3 p.m. And you can definitely see some energy within the atmosphere starting to fire up in portions of western Oklahoma and portions of central Texas. We are seeing around up to 2,000 joules per kilogram in more localized spots, but mainly up to 1,500 joules per kilogram, which is definitely not a bunch of energy, but definitely is enough to get those storms fired up in western Oklahoma, and it does have enough energy that does go eastward, and it's really keeping those storms really fired up, and that'll be traveling about an eastward direction. We are going to be looking at the future reflectivity here in a little bit, so you are going to see kind of that simulation of what's gonna go down. Really, let's look at a cap, and this is if you do have cap, you really won't have that much storms firing up to really holding back from those storms from firing if you do have cap. And let's go ahead and go to tomorrow, and you can definitely see some cap from the west of Oklahoma, but that's of course not where the storms are gonna fire. We go later in the day, and definitely that's actually gonna be this is actually gonna be the cold front that's gonna be coming through here. So there's actually not gonna be much cap where these storms are expected to fire. These storms are mostly expected to fire in eastern Oklahoma and those types of areas, and we don't have any cap there. So those storms are really not going to be held back from firing, and those are going to be traveling eastward as that cold front is right behind those storms. And you can obviously see the cap right behind that cold front, and those storms are really going to be triggered to fire by that cold front. Here's a surface-based lifted index, and you can see, let's go forward here when these storms are expected to fire, and you can definitely see a lot of lift within the atmosphere. This is really what's going to cause those storms to really lift and really fire up really high into the sky. And there's definitely a lot of lift, and that's really going to allow the atmosphere to make those storms fire and travel eastward into Arkansas. Now, bulk shear is really the main component if you want tornadoes, and if you don't have much shear, you're not going to have much tornadoes here. So let's go ahead and go forward to tomorrow, and you can definitely see a lot of shear is going to be within the atmosphere. You're going to see around 40 up to 40 knots. So that's definitely a lot of shear that's going to allow those isolated tornadoes to really happen in some of these areas. And we go forward here to that'll be around 6 or 7 p.m. Central Standard Time. And you can definitely see some pockets of 51 knots. So definitely some very strong shear. That's going to allow some isolated tornadoes for some of these areas. Here's the supercell composite, and it's pretty much showing the risk level of supercells developing within a certain point. So let's go ahead and let's go over to tomorrow. And you can see here, we are seeing around up to 12, and we are seeing mostly 10s in there. So definitely a pretty decent risk for those supercells developing in the Oklahoma and Texas areas. And that'll be traveling eastward as it weakens. Once it gets to around the eastern line of Oklahoma, it looks like that supercell risk will vanish. However, the most supercell risk will mostly be in kind of that northeastern and central Oklahoma area and that northeastern Texas area. Dallas forward looks to be impacted by these lines of storms, and if we look at significant tornado parameter index, we can see here. Let's go ahead and go forward here. We are seeing really up to 3. We're getting around the 3s, so definitely a pretty decent risk for some significant tornadoes if those supercells can really get strong enough. In my opinion, I don't think it will really produce any significant tornadoes. We definitely could see up to around an EF2 if those supercells, of course, can really get strong enough. But right now, up to an EF2 tornado is really going to be unlikely. Mostly those weak spin ups are going to be pretty likely in some of these tornado prone areas. We get to, and you can see that risk vanish once you get into the overnight hours. Now here's the simulated reflectivity. This is the composite reflectivity. And let's go ahead and go forward here. And looks like these storms will be expected to fire. And this is going to be around them. We might actually have some morning convection in the western Oklahoma areas and the northwestern Oklahoma areas. You will see some morning convection. So that may take some of the energy for the western portions of Oklahoma. So these storms are expected to fire around the afternoon hours, most likely around 4 to 5 p.m., around 3 to 5 p.m. We should see some storms firing in northwestern Oklahoma. There's going to be a big cell expected in northwestern Oklahoma. That looks pretty intense. So definitely will expect some intense cells in some of that northwestern Oklahoma area there. But these main cells are going to be expected to develop in more the eastern Oklahoma areas in the overnight hours. This is going to be around 9 p.m. Central Standard Time. So you are going to see those cells developing in eastern Oklahoma and northeastern Texas and mostly western Arkansas, even eastern Kansas. Definitely could see some of those cells moving into there, and more cells are going to be expected to develop in central Texas in those overnight hours. This is around midnight of November 25th. So as you can see, we are going to see kind of a line expected to develop around those overnight hours, hitting portions of Texas, and that definitely could bring some hail and damaging winds. Not much of a tornado threat. However, the northeastern portion of Texas, I would expect an isolated tornado threat for those overnight storms. If you did enjoy the update, be sure to subscribe to the channel so you won't miss a single update or live stream. And also make sure to share this video with any friends or family that may be impacted by these storms or would like an update for these expected severe storms that will be hitting parts of the South. But anyways, stay safe.